Have you ever like stumbled across something and you just knew you had to know more?
Yeah.
Like a piece of art or a bit of information that just sparks that
Oh,
curiosity.
yeah, for sure.
Like, what's going on here? I got to get to the bottom of this.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
Well, that's the energy we're bringing to this deep dive today. And the source of that magnetic pull this time is the artist Bob Camblin.
Oh, absolutely. Camblin, he's one of those artists who's just got this huge reputation. Everyone in the art world knows his name, and his work is just, it's everywhere, but it's also nowhere.
Right.
It's like trying to chase down a ghost.
It's like this hidden history.
Yeah, and when something of his does pop up, it's like,
Yeah.
major event, everyone's talking about it, the prices go crazy.
Oh, yeah. And the first thing that really hits you is just the variety in his work. We're talking oils, acrylics,
Yeah.
watercolors, drawings,
Mm-hmm.
prints. He even did these painted paper pieces.
Right.
It's like this insatiable creative energy, always trying new things, pushing the boundaries.
He was never content to just stick with one thing.
So to really dig into Candlin for this deep dive, we've got a whole bunch of material, his own words through, quotes, biographical info, a really interesting YouTube video transcript that breaks down his painting, Spavinaw #5, and a bunch of excerpts about his art and his philosophy.
Yeah.
A real mixed bag.
And our goal here is to bring all of that together for you.
Right.
To really distill Camblin's artistic vision.
Yeah, what are the big ideas behind his work?
Exactly. And this is for you, the listener, someone who wants to understand the core of something quickly and loves those aha moments when it all clicks into place.
Right.
So where do we start with this enigmatic artist?
Well, let's go back to the beginning. Camblin was born in Oklahoma in 1928, and a key turning point early on was his time at the Kansas City Art Institute
Right.
that led to a Fulbright scholarship, which took him to Italy,
Huh.
and that seems to have been a really crucial period for him.
What's fascinating about his time in Italy is what specifically seems to have impacted him. You know, of course, the Uffizi Gallery,
Oh, yeah, those masterpieces.
the Renaissance masters,
Yeah.
must have left a mark, but maybe even more directly influential, particularly in those abstract, figurative elements of his later work, were the Capuchin catacombs in Palermo.
Oh.
You know, imagine the impact on a young artist of all those preserved bodies,
Yeah.
almost like abstract sculptures in their own right.
Yeah, like almost accidental art in a way.
Right.
Yeah.
And you can see how that experience, seeing those bodies in that abstract, almost sculptural way, might have laid the groundwork for how he approached the human figure later on. It's
Yeah.
about capturing the essence rather than just creating a realistic depiction.
Yeah.
A real move away from traditional portraiture.
And we know that he specifically referenced paintings from the Uffizi, like Botticelli's Birth of Venus,
Right.
which strangely enough had a connection to KPFT radio later on.
Interesting, yeah.
And Primavera by Botticelli seems to have directly inspired his painting Flora, which itself is full of hidden imagery.
Wow.
It's like he's having this conversation across time with those Renaissance masters, taking their ideas and reinterpreting them through his own very distinct lens.
It shows how deeply engaged he was with art history.
Right.
He wasn't just copying, he was absorbing and transforming.
It's like building on the foundations of the past to create something new.
Exactly. And we also know that he spent time teaching before fully committing to his art in 1976.
Right.
Those years in academia, engaging with students with ideas that must have had a huge impact on his own thinking and approach.
For sure. And we can't forget about his upbringing in Ponca City, Oklahoma.
Yeah.
I mean, think about the visual landscape of his childhood, the Marland Estate, this huge symbol of the oil boom era.
Right.
The Pioneer Woman statue standing tall, the fantastical world of the Wizard of Oz. I mean, you have to wonder how those things filtered into his subconscious and maybe found their way into his art later on.
It really raises that question of how the seemingly mundane, the everyday things we encounter
Yeah.
can become something extraordinary in the hands of an artist. The Marland Estate, with all of its grandeur next to the symbolism of the pioneer woman, and then you've got the surreal journey in The Wizard of Oz, it suggests a mind that was open to both the real and the imaginary.
Totally. And then you have his lifelong friendship with Forrest Harrisberger, a relationship that lasted over 60 years, a shared passion for drawing and literature. They bonded over Emerson, the I Ching haiku, and Haiga.
Wow.
That early and continued engagement with Eastern philosophy seems super important for understanding his later work.
Absolutely. That early immersion in the I Ching, the Zen influence of haiku,
Yeah.
that points to a worldview that valued intuition, interconnectedness, finding meaning in simplicity, and those are ideas that really come through in his later work.
Definitely even his time in the Air Force Reserve during the Korean War, sketching the California coastline. I mean, all of these experiences, the ordinary, the extraordinary, they probably all played a part in shaping his artistic journey.
It all comes together.
So when we look at Camblin's artistic philosophy, it's clear that traditional critical acclaim or commercial success, that wasn't his main focus.
Yeah.
It seems like he was more interested in connecting with the viewer on a deeper, almost spiritual level.
It's about going beyond the surface,
Right.
bypassing the purely intellectual.
And what's really interesting is how his approach evolved. He starts with abstract expressionism,
Right.
which is already a step away from literal representation.
Yeah.
But then in the 1970s, he develops his mouches volantes style,
Yeah.
which means flying flies.
Literally flying flag.
And it refers to those spots you sometimes see in your vision.
Right.
And he translated that into his art, using these seemingly random dots and dashes to create these shimmering, almost hallucinatory effects.
It really plays with your perception.
Right, it's this radical shift, and it shows this desire to actively engage the viewer in a new way.
Yeah.
And then this idea of collaboration and deliberately pushing aside his own ego, signing his work as anonymous.
It's a powerful statement.
It is. It makes you think about the nature of authorship, the concept of the artist as this singular genius. I mean, it's almost like he wanted the art to speak for itself.
And if we connect that back to his interest in Zen philosophy,
Right.
the idea of transcending the ego fits right in.
Totally. And even in his later works like the Big Al series and Descent from the Cross, even though they might not be signed anonymous, they still carry that sense of exploring these big universal themes.
It's about something bigger than just personal expression.
Yeah, and early on, he was engaged in social protest through his art, which later evolved into this really interesting mix of social realism and non-objective forms.
Yeah.
So he was clearly responding to what was happening in the world around him, but in a way that wasn't always straightforward or easy to categorize.
Right.
You see the influence of artists like Cremoni, known for his super detailed drawings, and then Etruscan terracotta figurines with their simple, almost primitive forms.
It's such a broad range of influences.
Yeah, he was pulling from all over the place to create his own unique vision. And then in the 1960s, he was trying to combine the poetic suggestions of Hugo van der Goes with the emotional intensity of Goya. I mean, talk about a challenge.
That's ambitious.
It really highlights his deep understanding of art history and his desire to synthesize these completely different styles.
He wanted to push the boundaries.
Yeah, and then his work in the 1970s focuses on metamorphosis, birth, death, regeneration. The sources mention Freud, de Chirico, Grunewald, and you see these recurring images of puppets, scarecrows, skulls, murky water.
Powerful stuff.
Right. It was clearly a period of deep exploration into these really fundamental human experiences.
It's like he's tapping into something primal.
Yeah, and the connection to literary figures like Kazantzakis and Grass suggests that there's a narrative element to his visual language.
Right. It's like there's a story unfolding beneath the surface.
And as we move into the 1980s, you see this shift towards interwoven drawings and watercolors, illusionistic surfaces, and those ever-present hidden images. It's like he's asking the viewer to slow down and really pay attention.
To look beyond the obvious.
Right, to question their initial perception.
It's a challenge.
It is.
So we see this constant evolution with Camblin.
Yeah.
Never standing still, always experimenting with style, technique, subject matter, always driven by this underlying philosophical inquiry.
He was not content to just stay in one lane.
No.
So let's dive into some of those key themes and concepts that run through his work. And we can use some of his own quotes to help us along the way. Impermanence, or Mujo, as it's known in Zen Buddhism. This seems to be a central idea, and his painting, Spavinaw No. 5, really illustrates this.
The Spavinaw No. 5, it really captures that idea visually.
Yeah.
The way he combines decaying natural forms with mechanical elements, it speaks to that impermanence. Everything changes.
Everything breaks down.
Exactly. And that image of the fragmented fish head next to those metallic extensions, it's a powerful image of entropy, of things falling apart.
Yeah.
And there's a connection to the I Ching, specifically hexagram 18 work on what has been spoiled and hexagram 49 revolution, which also speaks to embracing that decay as part of transformation.
Right.
So impermanence for Campbell, it wasn't a negative thing. It was just a natural part of the universe.
Yeah, it's a part of the cycle.
Right.
And there's that quote, fortunately some things remain forever, or another 10 years perhaps.
Right.
That really gets at that awareness of the temporary nature of existence.
Yeah.
Even things that we think of as permanent.
They're all subject to change.
And then connecting that to Alan Roth's quote, about how we're all interconnected with everything. It suggests that impermanence isn't something to be afraid of, but rather a characteristic of that interconnected web of existence.
We're all part of that same flow.
Right.
Everything arises and dissolves together.
There's this one book review that describes Camblin's drawings as paradoxes made visible.
I like that.
Yeah, and Zen koans disguised as blueprints.
Wow.
And we know that he included traps and extra data problems.
Like deliberately trying to mislead the viewer.
Yeah, what do you think he was going for with that?
I think it's about the role of the viewer.
Right.
He wanted you to question your assumptions, to look deeper, to not take things at face value.
It's like those Zen koans,
Yeah,
which aren't meant to be solved logically, but to kind of trigger a shift in understanding.
exactly.
And he even said that words often get in the way of the direct experience of art.
He was referencing Tom Wolfe's The Painted Word.
Yeah, so those traps, those misleading elements,
Right.
they force you to rely on your visual intuition.
Your gut feeling.
Yeah, rather than immediately trying to put it into words.
Exactly.
So it's not about passively observing the art. It's about actively engaging with it, trying to figure it out.
It's like a puzzle.
Right. And through that process, you might even experience a kind of everyday enlightenment.
It's about that personal journey of discovery.
Yeah, not about being told what the art means,
Yeah.
figuring it out for yourself.
Exactly.
And there's a quote where Camblin talks about sticking with common sense and striving for the perfectly average view to appreciate miracles in both science and magic.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and there's that concept of resist and submit held in perfect equilibrium.
It's like finding a balance.
Yeah. How does that fit into his overall philosophy?
Well, I think the perfectly average, maybe it's not about mediocrity, but finding that balanced perspective
Yeah.
that allows you to appreciate both rational understanding, which is science, and also intuition,
Yeah.
which is what we might call magic.
Right.
And resist and submit held in balance that speaks to that same idea of navigating the world with both agency and acceptance.
Right, knowing when to push and when to let go.
Exactly.
And he had a lot to say about creativity and the artistic process. He saw it as a learning journey for the individual, echoing Koestler's idea that the creator is both teacher and student.
Yeah.
And his emphasis on drawing as a nonverbal form of communication, and that the concept behind it is also nonverbal. It all goes back to his skepticism about language.
Right.
It can't fully capture the artistic experience.
And it's interesting how he focuses on the process of creation,
yeah.
that heightened state of awareness,
Yeah.
rather than just the final product.
Right. It's about exploration, discovery, being in that flow state.
Yeah.
And then his thoughts on time and memory.
Right.
That, quote, fortunately, some things remain forever, or another 10 years, perhaps.
Yeah.
Again, that theme of impermanence and the idea that memories essentially stop at the moment decay sets in,
Right.
and this dredging up of memories to trigger these archetypal images.
It suggests a really interesting relationship with time.
It does.
There's an awareness that memory is fleeting,
Yeah.
that it decays just like physical objects.
Right.
But there's also this sense of tapping into something deeper,
Yeah.
those universal archetypes through memory.
Right. And he even says that nostalgia shouldn't be held onto for too long,
Yeah.
but its value is in that brief reconnection with those primal memories.
It's a fleeting glimpse.
And then there's this shift in his perspective expressed in the quote, art for art's sake has become art for life's sake, or art for my sake, or art for survival's sake.
Right.
It's like a move away from a purely aesthetic pursuit
Yeah.
towards something more personally meaningful.
Art as a necessity.
Yeah. And then this really powerful line, step off the train of thought to find the power that is no power.
That sounds very zen.
Yeah, it's like he's talking about quieting the rational mind
Right.
to access a deeper, more intuitive understanding.
Letting go of control.
And finally, on the topic of belief and knowing, he references Jung's distinction between the two,
Yeah.
pointing out that belief doesn't require direct experience, while knowing does.
Right.
And this idea of the mystic's direct experience and finding your own mystic switch that personal trigger for truth.
It's about that subjective experience.
Yeah, not about blindly accepting dogma,
Right.
but having your own personal realization.
Yeah, your own aha moment.
So turning to Camblin as a person,
Yeah.
he's been called a mystical trickster figure,
I love that.
a gregarious storyteller, someone who questioned everything and everybody. He seemed to really thrive on collaborations,
Right.
even if they involved lots of debate and laughter.
He sounds like a fascinating guy.
He does.
Full of life.
And his relationship with the art world, the galleries, it seems like that was complicated too.
Yeah.
He sometimes refused payment for his work,
Wow.
which suggests that he wasn't just motivated by money.
Right. He had his principles.
Yeah, and he had specific ideas about how his exhibition should be presented. He wanted to control the environment, minimize outside interference.
He had a vision.
Yeah, and then his nomadic lifestyle in the 70s and 80s
Right.
that speaks to this independent spirit,
Yeah.
wanting to live and work outside of the system.
Yeah.
And even his later move to Oregon and Louisiana and his distance from the Houston art scene, it all points to this iconoclastic nature.
He did things his own way.
He did. And then there's that detail about the Mr. Peanut costume.
That's a great image.
It is, isn't it? And along with his decision to sign his work as anonymous, it suggests this deliberate blurring of his personal identity.
It's about the art, not the artist.
Yeah,
And the Mr. Peanut thing, it could be another example of that trickster archetype,
right.
poking fun at the art world.
Maybe even a commentary on the commodification of art.
Right. Turning it into a product.
Yeah.
And the anonymity is like the logical endpoint of that.
So bringing this back to you, our listener,
Yeah.
Camblin's exploration of impermanence, it really resonates with our own experience of information these days.
Right.
Knowledge is constantly changing,
Evolving.
being updated, becoming obsolete.
It's a never-ending process.
And those aha moments, those sudden flashes of understanding,
Yeah.
they're kind of like the discoveries you can make in Camblin's work with all those hidden meanings and paradoxes.
Right. You have to work for it.
Yeah, you have to be willing to look beyond the surface.
Exactly.
And the importance of slowing down, really engaging with complex ideas,
Right.
that reflects Camblin's own meticulous approach to art making.
He took his time.
He did.
He built up those layers.
And it's a reminder that real understanding often takes time and effort.
It's not a quick fix.
So to sum it all up, Bob Camblin was a truly enigmatic artist. His work explored these really profound themes of impermanence, interconnectedness, how we perceive reality.
Big questions.
And he did it through this really unique blend of artistic styles and deep philosophical inquiry.
He was always searching.
And what's clear is that his art, it's not passive.
No.
It demands your attention, your participation.
Yeah.
It's a personal journey of discovery.
It's a challenge
It is.
and a reward.
So, our final thought for you today, thinking about Camblin's fascination with hidden meanings and the fact that understanding is always changing.
Yeah.
Maybe the most important knowledge isn't about finding definite answers,
Right.
but about embracing the questions themselves.
Like those layers in a Camblin artwork.
Exactly, waiting to be uncovered. And we encourage you to think about what your own mystic switch might be, to borrow Camblin's phrase.
Yeah.
What's that personal key that unlocks deeper meaning in your life and the world around you?
It's a question worth pondering
It is.
long after this deep dive is over.
Exactly.